I'm Andy Kristoff, and this is Pathbend, your guide to personal growth and healing, blending science, art, and spirit. The topic of today's video is why personal change never seems to stick. I just returned from Austin, where I went through several somatic workshops called the Bridge Method. They stretch your nervous system, not just metaphorically, but biologically, by immersing you in intense, uncomfortable, full body experiences. I came back drained but also lit up. But it's been several days now, and I'm starting to feel the undertow. As I return to my life as usual, I felt the gravity pulling me back into my familiar patterns. What was safe, what was me before the shift, playing small and hiding inside my shell. You've probably felt this too. So the natural question that came to mind was, how do I keep the momentum? Let me frame this differently. I bet most of you made New Year's resolutions. And now that we're in April, I bet that for most of you, those resolutions are already a distant memory. Based on research, 80% of resolutions are abandoned by February, and fewer than 1 in 10 survive the entire year. This isn't accidental. Tuning into my body allowed me to recognize that the key to breaking this cycle isn't in the head, which is what most people default to. People spend years reading books and tens of thousands of dollars attending seminars. That's like hacking at the leaves while keeping the trunk intact. The trunk is our emotional body. It's not a matter of using more discipline or willpower, despite what you're hearing all over the place. The key is understanding and leveraging the hidden forces at play within our nervous system. Because change doesn't fail in the moment of action, it fails in the aftermath. The real battle is in sticking with change. At the heart of our struggle is a powerful biological principle called homeostasis. Our body, brain, and behavior have a built-in tendency to stay the same within rather narrow limits and to snap back when changed. Homeostasis is the regulatory mechanism that keeps us alive, but it has a dark side. Because it turns out we resist all change, not only if it's bad, but even if it's really good for us. And here's an insight that few of us take time to appreciate. Homeostasis isn't just psychological, it's systemic. It's true that it operates at the hormonal level, but it also extends to all self-regulating systems inside and outside our bodies. That includes your mind, your emotions, but also social systems like relationships, families, companies, entire cultures. In personal development circles, a metaphor that often pops up is that of the thermostat. When it gets too cold, meaning when we get too unhappy with our current circumstances, the idea is that we start cranking, we start acting. And when it gets too hot, the AC kicks in and we start sabotaging our efforts in order to shrink back to our baseline. But that's an oversimplification because unlike a thermostat, which uses a single feedback loop to keep the temperature stable, organic systems, including the human nervous system, rely on thousands of feedback loops to stay alive and well. So resistance can pop up in many unexpected places. Remember this, the primary function of all homeostatic feedback loops is to keep things as they are. That means resist all change. This resistance isn't inherently bad because it keeps the organism alive and the world stable. We do want our bodies, families, and organizations to hold together, to be somewhat predictable. But homeostasis poses a significant barrier to personal transformation. Dr. Joe Dispenza, in Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself, explains how emotional patterns burnt into our biology by past experiences pull us into predictable reactions. They're like chemical cocktails, chemical imprints, deeply embedded at the hormonal level. So when we try to adopt a new behavior, these embedded emotional signatures trigger predictable physiological alarms. Our body gets flooded with hormones that manifest as anxiety, pain, overwhelm, discomfort, or whatever emotion it was that our past experience got us in the habit of living. Dispenza calls this living in the past. We're stuck in the same emotional groove, same thoughts, same biochemistry. To shift this, he advocates somatic practices like meditation, mindfulness, visualization, tools to interrupt those loops and recondition the nervous system towards a new future that aligns with our desired identity. Even so, when you commit to becoming someone new, homeostasis is a formidable force to reckon with. You've certainly felt it, but you probably didn't have the words to name it. The alarm signal can come in the form of physical symptoms such as pain and fatigue, or psychological responses like anxiety, overwhelm, or guilt, with their accompanying thoughts and beliefs. Things like, this is too much, or I can't do this, I'll leave this for tomorrow, etc. This results in the emergence of three distinct patterns. Self-sabotage, where you subconsciously thwart your best efforts. Backsliding, where your efforts gradually fizzle with time. And the most insidious one, resistance from others. Since you're embedded in a larger social system governed by the same homeostatic principles, you may see family, friends, and coworkers reacting with subtle withdrawal, passive comments, or even concern disguised as advice. It's often subconscious and not malicious. Because just like your body seeks equilibrium, so do your relationships. You've played a certain role in the system most of your life, and when you start changing and growing, the system starts tugging at you to stay put. If you've stayed with me this far, I hope you're finding value in this content, so please take a second to hit the like button and subscribe to my channel. This supports my mission to create free quality content to help others live more fulfilling lives. Now let me get back to it. You can't hide from the forces of homeostasis. Its effects on maintaining the status quo in all facets of psychic and social life is all pervasive, even in the areas you'd least expect. The more complex the system, the more feedback loops it has working in concert to reinforce stability. At the social level, those feedback loops could often be unexpected things like rewards, punishments, gifts, favors, perks, rituals, law enforcement, media, pop culture. The list goes on and on. In his incredible book, Mastery, George Leonard suggests that even psychotherapy, in its talkier forms at least, is sought after only to the extent that it changes nothing very much except for the patient's ability to talk about his or her problems. And from this, Leonard extrapolates a fundamental rule that's worth remembering. The resistance in any system is proportionate to the size and the speed of the change, not to whether the change is favorable or unfavorable. So the harder the pull and the more sudden the change, the more resistance you can expect to face. This is easier to observe externally than internally. So for instance, if a new cultural initiative in your company starts meeting tremendous resistance, you can safely conclude that it's because the initiative departs significantly from business as usual. It's either a tremendously good idea or a tremendously bad idea. On the other hand, trivial changes like bureaucratic paper pushing or process improvements are much easier to accept, and that's why you see so many of them. Let me bring this back home to our internal processes. If a new habit you're trying to build meets strong resistance, that may be the exact proof you need that it matters, that you're making a difference. Big important changes trigger loud alarm bells, but this doesn't mean you should despair. Lasting change does happen at every level of life. We've seen this many times. So it's crucial to embrace the discomfort that comes with it, the anxiety, the pain, the relational ruptures. They're all signs that you're getting unstuck, that you're moving. Keep this front and center. Walk into new situations with awareness. Walk in with a plan. As both psychologists and coaches remind us, it often gets worse before it gets better. Now let's make these ideas actionable. Here are 5 strategies from Leonard for making change stick. The first and foremost strategy is awareness of how homeostasis operates. Start noticing its effects at all levels in your life. Your pivotal move is to reframe the various resistance signals as signs that your life is actually changing. In other words, learn to embrace the suck. If you've gone back to the gym after a long period of no workouts, you know exactly what I mean. Your body starts screaming with soreness. As a corollary, remember that homeostasis also affects the social systems you're embedded in. This is why Jim Rohn's famous quote, "You are the average of the 5 people you spend most time with," rings so true. But as you may realize now, this idea makes for great cocktail conversations, but it's too simplistic. You're the victim of your environment, only if you live mindlessly. Attunement to homeostatic forces and thinking in systems is how you reclaim your power. And here's the deeper truth. You're not just the average of the 5 people you spend most time with, you're one of the bunch. They're also shaped by you and how you show up. Your awareness, your self-regulation, your quiet courage in the face of resistance, these create ripples. So long as you can withstand the heat of temporary pushback, you can shift the emotional set point of those around you. Relatedly, and perhaps most importantly, bear in mind that the entire system has to change when any part of it changes. This is where you can unlock tremendous hidden leverage. Take a moment to reflect on this. It sheds a whole new life on Gandhi's famous quote, "Be the change you want to see in the world." As soon as you become different, the whole world changes as well. Let's move on to the second strategy, negotiate with your resistance. The two quickest ways for your efforts to fizzle are either to bulldoze forward too aggressively or to back off too easily. Instead, you gotta play the middle ground. Negotiate with your body and with your social environment. Continuously fine-tune your resistance by recognizing when to press on the gas pedal and when to tap on the brakes. Or stated differently, be willing to take a step back for every 2 steps forward, and sometimes the other way around. Leonard calls this the art of playing the edge. It's about managing the tension between progress and the natural limits of our homeostatic responses. Think of a long-distance runner aiming to shave a few seconds off their personal record. Pain isn't their enemy, it's their feedback system. David Goggins, the ultra runner and Navy SEAL, exemplifies the extreme version of this strategy. He's living proof of the virtually limitless potential we have when we befriend our pain. But even he acknowledges the risk of pushing too far. Leonard recommends striking a balance, having the drive to stretch your limits, but also the situational awareness to notice and interpret the warning signals. Disregard those signals and you risk backsliding, or worse, injury that sets you back for months. Negotiation, then, is less about force and more about attunement. Complex, self-regulating systems work in devious and unpredictable ways. They're like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get. Resistance might show up as anxiety one day, or a migraine, a fight with your partner, a sudden crisis at work, or it might come dressed as nothing at all. Stay alert, be prepared for masterful negotiation. Third strategy, develop a support system. Getting on a journey to change is challenging, and having a supportive community can make a world of difference. Sharing your experiences with people who understand what you're going through can give you both emotional and practical support. As Leonard underscores, the best support system would involve people who've gone through or are currently going through a similar process. People who can tell their own stories of change and listen to yours. People who will brace you up when you start to backslide and encourage you when you don't. Yes, it's possible to do it alone, but it helps a ton to share the ups and downs of the journey and embed yourself in a social network that will take your game to the next level. It's no surprise that professional runners have pacers, PhD students study in cohorts, and even Olympic athletes train in teams. At the very least, let your closest people know what your goals are and make sure they have your back. Fourth strategy, follow a regular practice. Consistency goes to the very heart of mastery. When you make any type of change effort, you can gain stability through having some type of regular practice in at least one area of life. This could be exercise, meditation, or any habit that anchors your day and gives you a sense of normalcy. This provides a sort of underlying homeostasis, a stable fulcrum around which the flux of transformation can revolve. As surprising as this may sound, it's easier to start showing up differently in your relationship, for example, if you haven't already established meditation or workout routine to ground you. Establishing a regular practice also has a lot to do with habit formation and habit loops. I won't go into habits in detail, but it's worth double-clicking on this point. Habits take time to establish and fortify, usually 21, 60, or more days. So find a system that works for you. Personally, I found that tracking a new habit in an app like Strides, or even putting up a big whiteboard by my bed and doing it manually, tremendously increases my chances of making the habit stick. The goal is to keep the streak going, what Jerry Seinfeld calls the never break the chain rule. I especially like a distinction I learned from my former coach, Giovanni Dienstmann, the author of Mindful Self-Discipline. He calls it never zero commitment. Things always get in the way, so a never zero commitment gives you flexibility without having to break the chain. It's simple. Define in advance the minimum acceptable version of your habit and commit to doing it always, in all weather, no matter what. Let's say your ideal daily workout is 50 to 60 minutes. Your never zero commitment could be as easy as doing 10 push-ups or driving to the gym and spending 5 minutes on the treadmill. It's especially important to create a never zero commitment for the 1 or 2 keystone habits that will massively advance your goals. A hidden benefit is that sticking with your commitment reinforces your new identity. And identity change is the holy grail of lasting change. With strategies such as habit tracking and never zero, you gradually establish a new baseline, a new homeostasis. Your body develops comfort with what used to feel uncomfortable. Your new identity no longer feels foreign. You remain flexible, but close the door to any excuses. Finally, here's the granddaddy strategy. Dedicate yourself to lifelong learning. To achieve continuous growth, you must be highly adaptable to changing circumstances, because life never stops throwing curveballs at you. Leonard makes a subtle but incredibly powerful point distinction. To learn is to change. Take a moment to appreciate this, because it also implies the inverse, that to change is to learn. Learning is a form of adaptation. So the best learning of all involves learning how to learn, and this is synonymous with learning how to change. I believe this is one of the most empowering mindset shifts you can make. As paradoxical as it sounds, the goal is to make change your new constant. To quote Leonard, the lifelong learner is essentially one who has learned to deal with homeostasis simply because he or she is doing it all the time. Crucially, the bridge method opened my eyes to the fact that the most effective learning isn't cognitive. Book learning is fairly narrow and limiting, and it's only marginally effective, especially when it comes to adapting to life circumstances and achieving personal change. If books alone were enough, most people would be superhumans. So make sure you're also tapping into the power of your body and of learning by doing. Train your emotional body, your nervous system. Embrace practices and situations that deliberately push you out of your comfort zone. You don't have to go as extreme as David Goggins to reap massive benefits from this approach, as long as you do it consistently. To give you a personal example, creating this channel was a huge undertaking for me, a huge change effort. There still are many moments when I feel overwhelmed, demotivated, drained, self-critical, but then I remind myself that this very process is a great example of negotiating with the forces of homeostasis. Recognizing this has made it easier for me to keep going. This video is the result. If you found any idea in it that'll make a difference in your life, please share the link with others who might benefit from this episode. It's word of mouth referrals that help the channel grow and inspire me to keep going. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.